Turn my camera off too then. Welcome to the breakdown. This program is brought to you by the African National Women's Organization, ANWO, a mass organization under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. The breakdown is a monthly news, analysis, and opinion program, as well as a platform for highlighting guests whose issues spotlight the international plight of colonized women fighting colonialism. My name is Coco Lewis. I am ANWO's Information and Education Coordinator and the MC for the breakdown. I am joined by the leadership of AMWO, President Yejide Oramila, who is also leading member of the African People's Socialist Party. Today, we will summarize the national, international, and hyper-local news that shaped women's lives in 2025. We will also share more about AMWO's programs that focus on organizing and creating dual and contending power inside our communities. Before diving in today, let me remind you that AMWO is an imperialist, anti-colonialist organization for African women and femmes. We're the only. And also want to let you know that we are an organization of the African poor and working class. So, and we are not a nonprofit. Every single program that we have is focused to bring resources to our organization and our programs to operate the cost. We're a organization of African women and femmes volunteering our hard work and our sweat equity into this organization. And we are looking to raise $250 today in support of ANWO, the ANWO Liberation Center, and going towards our Project St. Louis, which brings together the One Africa, One Nation Farmers Market, Annual Liberation Center, and Thrive workshops and activities that organize African women around food, land, economic development, and concrete skills for self-determination. You can donate at any point in the program by going to anwoahuru.org/donate, or you can zell us at info@anwoahuru.org or on Cash App as STL Annual. You can also wear the revolution by purchasing from our merchandise at anwoahuru.org/storefront or decolonize.com. Before we begin, subscribe and follow us on all of our platforms. Comment where you're watching from, and we are streaming today on the Burning Spear TV and African National Women's Organization YouTube channels and on the ANWO page on Facebook. We encourage you to share this program with your network and comment shared in the chat. Chat with us live during this program as we talk about some exciting and controversial events that happened during the 2025. And I'm excited about today's discussion. So, Uhuru, comrades, welcome to the program.
I want to make a statement that the African National Women's Organization is completely, emphatically against the attack on Venezuela, the kidnapping of the Maduro family, um, and we stand with the Venezuelan people. We will come out with something that's we have a strong statement that we are working on to put out that really encapsulates, all the points that we want to make, and that will be coming out a little bit later today. But we definitely wanted to be able to say that before we started the breakdown to talk about, the things that have shaped the lives of African women in the last year. Um, my name is Yejide Oromila. I'm the president of the African National Women's Organization, as Comrade Coco has just indicated. And then joining us, I don't know if Miriam has she's been working on the producer back end for some time now. And Miriam is our producer. She is, you going to introduce ourselves? And then she is a new comrade, new annual comrade, new party comrade. Yes, comrade.
Yeah. So, my name is Mariam Aziza Muhammad. I'm a member of the African National Women's Organization, as well as the African People's Socialist Party. And as President Yejide said, I've been working on the back end for quite a few months now, in the breakdown. And it's great to be like on screen, like, because we have these meetings beforehand and I see myself on the screen, then I disappear. So it is cool to be on.
Guru, so glad to have you. And then Coco is on the road, as y'all can see. So we get her in and out, and hopefully she'll be able to be in place soon. So we wanted to talk about we just wanted to have a year in review to talk about the events that shaped African women's lives in 2025, and what it means to us as an African women's organization. We're going to talk about things that we have based on some of these things that have happened in the lives of African women. We are going to be talking about actual practical work that we are engaged in to offset some of the things that are happening to us as colonized African women, and how we're planning on building and growing. I know that many of you might have seen the chairman's address or analysis around the Venezuelan attack yesterday that was put out. It was phenomenal. It's at 11,000 views and counting so far. And one of the things that stayed with me from that, a lot of things stayed with me, but one of the things that was so really poignant about that, what Chairman said, was that, we have come to a point where protesting isn't enough, that we have to organize, build, and grow. ANWO has our Organize, Fight, and Win campaign. We have to be able to build dual and contending power. We have to be a part of organization, being a part of planning the future that we want to see. Because if not, then we're going to continue to see more of the same. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm so through with colonialism. And I'm young in colonialism. Like, I'm a baby. I'm a fetus in colonialism. It's been going on for hundreds of years. And it has been such a draining experience to live underneath this. And so, we're going to be talking about some of the things that shape those lives, conditions for African people, and in some specifics, African women. And we're going to start off with it's related to Venezuela, the 2025 election of Donald. I love when the chairman says the middle name, Donald John Trump. And he was in an electoral race with Joe Biden, and then it came down to Kamala Harris, and he lost. I'm sorry, Kamala lost. And one of the things that came out of that in terms of how Black women were communicating about the election and the loss of Kamala Harris was that they tried to save U.S. democracy through their efforts. Black women spent a lot of time organizing, coming onto calls, raising a lot of money to ensure that Kamala Harris would have the resources and the funding to compete with a Donald John Trump. And we also saw a lot of effort being done politically to help us understand that she was the better alternative. As a matter of fact, most of the campaigning was really about she's not Trump, as opposed to what she actually stood for. And she, again, stood for U.S. imperialism. So some discussions have been made inside of the African National Women's Organization about, what kind of expectations we should have expected, and what then if we wasn't supporting a Kamala Harris or nor a Donald Trump, then what should we expect Black people to do and Black women to do? And I just wanted to open that up to our comrade, because we have some points that we wanted to share about our thoughts on now a year later, throughout the year, did Black women tell us? Were they right? Based on some of the comments that I've seen on the socials, and how Black women said that they were giving up on U.S. democracy.
I think one of the most important things to note is that, like, this lesser of two evils idea is not, like, in reality, it's not a material thing. Like, no matter who was president, Democrat or Republican, elephant or donkey, babies in Gaza were going to die. Black people were still going to be under, like, the subject colonial rule of violence. So the idea that, like, you could just vote something away or vote your way out of, and I'm very sure, what I think people are looking for, because when we had Obama, Kamala Harris had, like, this veil of, like, she's doing colonialism, but at least she makes it look pretty. She makes the colonialism look pretty. She's a beautiful woman. She's, like, to some degree well-spoken. And, because people are, especially I think a lot of liberal people are going back to the idea of wanting to be comfortable again. I think she represents a big layer of comfortability. And I can get it in the sense that Trump is just so open about how vicious things are that, like, I think people wanted imperialism and colonialism kind of, like, wrapped in a pretty bow, and Kamala Harris represented that for, like, a lot of us, especially a lot of Black women. But I think one of the main thing is, like, there is no lesser of two evils. The Democrats were going to do the same thing as the Republicans. Like, it's all the same thing. And I think we still haven't really learned from Obama, because, like, the way people talk about Kamala Harris, I can tell we haven't really moved on.
No, I mean, and you have to throw on top of that, like you talk about being wrapped in a pretty bow. She is the antithesis of what we expect out of the Black elite, the Black excellence. She went to Howard, which is they call it the Black Mecca for academic education at HBCUs. She pledged the first Black, Hellenic Greek organization, AKA, and she represents, what people consider Black excellence. But I also want to make sure that we understand that, Black excellence or the Black elite are in the bed with colonialism. They believe in, supporting the system and getting the funds because they fare better than the poor and working class African people. So their alignment and their allegiance is with the colonial power. Um, Going back to what Chairman, yesterday you mentioned, Chairman was calling for, not just mobilization because he supported, the mobilizations that were happening yesterday and today, but we can't just mobilize. We are, because mobilizing means we go out there, relax, we go home. It is void of actual work to overturn the contradictions that we experience due to living under um, colonial not leadership, because they're not leading me anywhere, but just colonial oppression. Uhuru.
Her comrade Miriam put something on the screen, and I think this is one of the pieces that we read at the beginning of the year, Black women are tired. Harris lost. Has some organizers been re-examining their coalitions, and I think what a lot of these Black women. So some of the things that happened um, in the election for Trump, in the Kamala Harris Trump election, was Black women organized calls. They raised hundreds and thousands of dollars, maybe even millions. I'm not sure, based on your class designation. Um, there were all these things that were happening to consolidate U.S. Democracy, to save U.S. democracy, and I think that we have to really point it out like that, because outside of that, the same effort could be used to raise money for AMWO to get the Liberation Center up. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Actual grassroots, work that we do in other organizations that may not be anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist like us, but who are doing work within the actual community, brick and mortar work, physical work. If we put our money really into our communities and into the organizations that's organizing for the liberation of African people versus putting our funds towards upholding this capitalist system, you know, we will get somewhere.
Yeah, we are getting somewhere, and I think that what's really important is for us to learn that Black women who organized for Kamala were not right. Like, I think that this kind of apathetic, I told you so sort of thing when we see what's happening in the first year with Trump. But he's just the more egregious round. And I think that what people would prefer at this point is someone who is less egregious and more secretive and more underhanded in their dealings and control of U.S. imperialism. But we should have recognized that, Carmen Merriam, you were talking about you're on Twitter being in trouble with the blacks because of how a statement that you said about that Kamala would have did the same thing in Venezuela, and people don't realize. And if you do realize, right, like it should be that Kamala Harris united with the war, the Israeli attack on Palestine, and said that she would continue to do that. So if she was, going to uphold and continue U.S. imperialism, um, so the idea that if we had voted for Kamala, if Black women were right, and we had voted for Kamala, we would have gotten less. We would have been okay, and that's not the reality of it.
Yeah.
No, something I dislike even more than that is unfortunately, I feel like African women who supported Kamala, they're waiting for the moment to say, I told you so, instead of doing the work in the meantime. Like, this is a time that African people and the poor and working class in general need to, like, or we need to organize to overturn this system. This this like the thing about, and you said this before when we were talking about the election beforehand, and you were like, the reason why you hope that he wins because it will show everybody the because it's the most polarizing view of the colonial structure, and that's exactly what it has been. We can't we can't take this time and grumble and grump and just talk. We have to organize. And if you are a poor or working class person, especially an African poor and working class person, it's time to organize for the overturning of this system.
Yeah, I was gonna say in reference, I know I was talking behind the scenes before we started the show about like the tweet. So yesterday with the attack on Venezuela, yeah, I was just so frustrated because it was kind of like an "I told you so" with a lot of the Kamala supporters, and I don't think, like President Yejide was just saying, the foreign policy is very similar. But let me, like, this tweet I tweeted got over and I'll show it. Let me put it on screen. This got over 1 million views, and then it got a bunch of retweets and a bunch of engagement. And I thought it was just so insane because like I had people like saying that like, oh, they hope I got bombed for criticizing Kamala. But let me pull it up because like we don't have to go through like the engagement, but it was just like that was a lot to can we
Yes.
yeah, it was yeah, that was insane. Like that was a lot. I said somewhere out there is a lib about to tweet that Kamala would have never done this, and I won now.
She's like, I'm gonna be
Just the engagement
preemptive
on it,
and
and
tell
that
you to cut it
tried
out.
to chairman underneath it.
So in the year that has come, we can pretty much see that Trump is, probably Kamala on steroids, or just less cloaking. Trump. I think also another thing that we see is that Trump is doing exactly what he says. And what did you say before we got started, Coco? Right? Like, it's it's um it's showing that every other president, including your Obama,
Correct. Yeah.
right?
So I mean, I've been as a because I'm a researcher. I like I always dig deep. I'm not a surface person when I just look at an article. But because this happened, I was looking at videos of Hugo Chavez and how that the plan for Venezuela is a 25-year plan. They've been planning and praying um, on Venezuela since Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
So, not Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, George R. Bush, the Daddy Bush. I always call him Daddy Bush, son Bush. Since Daddy Bush. And so since they've been working on it for that long, that means every president since him has been working on his plan, regardless of what party they are aligned with. This is a colonial plan. It's not a Republican plan. This is a colonial plan. It's not a Trump plan.
Right.
He just executing what has already been done in the background.
Mhm.
And you made a good point when we were talking in the INC meeting about how the thing about Trump is that he does what he says. We have and he don't care about who is it against or how it's gonna work out or if even if it's logical or legal. He just do whatever he wants to do. So it's proof that the prior presidents who say they were working in for the people could do what they said they were gonna
Hold
do
on,
when he
hold on,
elected
hold
them.
on. I don't know
Anyway,
if any prior president was saying they were working for the people. I
I
don't know.
mean,
That's
they
called a
they
little bit
run on
short.
that. They run on that. They run on that. They run on the idea of we're
That's
for the
right.
working class man, we're for the blue collar, especially what's his name? Epstein's other friend. What is his name? Bill Clinton.
Oh,
Especially Bill
okay.
Clinton.
I wasn't paying attention to that election, but that,
Especially Bill Clinton. The Midwest. He working for the.
yeah. So, okay, so just to wrap up this first topic. So, I mean, where are we a year from now? Like a year from then, right? Like, I think we talked about a lot of the things, but we are in the Trump uh, regime. We got 3 more years. He might get reelected, I think.
No, he can't get reelected. He's
Why
trying.
not? Why
Maybe he'll
not?
do it.
He's getting. I mean, the people who voted for him and won out the election, right, are the
The
majority. He might be
Constitution only give him 2 terms. The
two
Constitution
consecutive
only give two
terms.
terms. No, it's
Oh,
not 2 consecutive terms. It's
oh,
two
okay.
terms.
Look at
They
me not
want to
knowing
avoid an
anything.
Eisenhower.
Um,
But I
so
don't
maybe.
think he's gonna like health wise. I don't think he's gonna make it his whole time. He
No.
is he is a quintessential American, even though he's not American in genealogy, as far as been here generations. But he's the American idea as far as he has a poor diet. You know, he looks like he's never exercised a day in his life, and doesn't like to taste the water. That's what he looks like. So just looking at his physical, like, the issues that he's having with falling asleep during important meetings, feet so swollen that he can't stand up. I mean, I don't think that he's gonna, last, but I think that the people that's behind him, like JD Vance, is is worse. Like, I
Yeah.
think those people are worse. JFK Jr. worse with
Mhm.
his weird sounding self.
So you're thinking that we're going to see a lot, even if he's not, he obviously can't get reelected, but even if he's not, there's a long road of people that
Yeah, he's
will
built
do
his
such a thing.
cabinet of
Yeah.
imperialists.
Hmm.
And then the issue is like
Let's
his.
be clear.
Uh,
Hold on,
Go
Coco.
ahead.
U.S. imperialism is U.S. imperialism. It
Yeah,
ain't being created. Like the whole office of the United States president and the United States government is imperialist. But you mean that he's building more of the same of him?
correct. He's
Okay.
building people. I mean, because look at the propaganda he's pulling out. I mean, I feel like they if you research history, you know that the Nazis, Germany's, I should say Germany, so we don't get strikes, but Germany's like their propaganda inspiration
Hmm.
was America and the Ku Klux Klan. So
Yeah.
they took the propaganda strategies out of Jim Crow era and had the World War II Germany, and that's how they were able to condition the people. I feel like they're doing the same thing now. They went into their old playbook,
Hmm.
pull out this propaganda because even people, it's like, look at the mass media message about the Venezuela situation. You're saying that the people was against Maduro. They're showing people celebrating, but they're showing some people celebrating Venezuelan citizens in the U.S. These
Hmm.
Right.
people left because they didn't want to be a part of the people's program. But when you look at the people that are actually, wasting up against the U.S., that are Venezuelan, are black like us. They're African people. These are and that's the thing. You getting it. Those are the capitalists, people that fall in love with the capitalist regime and end up, supporting, pushing the mass media message. Ooh.
I'm trying to multitask. So thank you so much for y'all's input. And I'm looking for the chat. I know y'all got something to say. I mean, we got some people on here looking at us and nodding your head, so I appreciate y'all. And I just want to also just acknowledge the donation that we got from Unemployed Scholar 4320. Thank you, Comrade, for contributing. And our goal is to raise $100. I know you said 250, Coco, but I want to ease it out to like $100 during this program to go to contribute to what our Project St. Louis work, which is, what Comrade Coco raised, is organizing our African Liberation Center, the One African One Nation Farmers Market, and the Thrive workshop and activities that we're focused on in 2026. So this is what we're talking about in terms of the organizing work that must happen. If all these sisters who raised all this money for Kamala did it for Amwell, and we would be set, you know what I'm saying? And
The
but
Mecca for African women will be
we will
built.
be
You
we will be
understand?
set. We will
Afro
be
Liberation Center will be built.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes. So, I mean, continue to support us, and if you can, please donate toward the work that we're doing, and we'll say more about that as we continue through our program. So, what else happened? Asada Shakur passed in 2025, September 2025, which signaled an end of 44 years of the U.S. Pursuit of Comrade Asada Shakur. And essentially, we wrote a statement around this, saying that Assata Shakur died free-ish. I say ish because no African person is free until we end and destroy colonialism. But in Cuba, there is more freedom, I think, than anywhere else in the world for African people. And we just want to continue to big up the Cuban people for really giving her protection throughout this entire 44 years. But, I think that's really important for us she's an example to African women everywhere, and anybody who's opposed to oppression, opposed to U.S. imperialism. And we were at the women's retreat that we created, the first one that we ever did when we heard of her passing. Comrades who've actually met her and consider her a friend were at this retreat and shared stories around, her plight and her resistance and her fortitude throughout these 44 years. And I think that it's really important as, we watched the press conference that the United States government, Donald J. Trump did, Mark Rubio throwing out his little old chest, launching threats toward Cuba, that, this is a Cuba that protected our Assata Shakur. This is a Cuba that has, done so much for the African world. And I just think that, this was a really significant loss. But also, I'm so glad that she is resting in power now and outside of the danger of the U.S. government. What are your thoughts, Carmen Marielle?
Yeah, when I heard that she passed away, at first I didn't want to believe it because I was like, let me just wait and see what the sources are to confirm, because sometimes people have a habit of killing people off before they're even actually dead. But the idea, like you said, no person is free truly until, especially of African descent, until colonialism is crushed. But I really like that she was at least able to get some freedom in the remainder of her life. And my thing is, people discuss, the actual case in the 1970s. Did she shoot the cop? Did she? Personally, whether she did it or not, I was gonna love Assata anyway. That's the Black gorilla in me. I was gonna love Assata Shakur whether she did it or because that was a time in the 1960s and 70s where the military, because we talked about this before, the military defeat of African comrades back in the day who were really, basically Black guerrillas, on a 1-on-1 battle with the state. So at that point, in my opinion, the police officer that died, that's kind of a casualty of war. They were at war, the Black Liberation Army, and part of the Panthers and everything that was going on. Because they were trying to, that day, they were really trying to kill all of those comrades. The fact that Assata Shakur escaped is miraculous because the total end of the goal that day was to essentially gun her down. So the fact
they
that she
did gun
was
her
able to
down.
get
They did gun her down. She was in the hospital.
right,
She
did
was
get
raped with bullets.
nearby.
Yeah, and when they gunned her down, they dragged her through the streets. And, they did attempt to kill her, but she survived. And she went on to have her daughter. And then she escaped through the Black Liberation Army. And then, I just think, I don't know, this is a woman that was built different than some of these sisters out here. You know what I mean? Right. This is a woman that we can only hope to aspire to, that if faced with the same conditions, will we be able to do the same thing? And it's more than just idolizing her in a way that is just, making it sound, sweet, or, idolizing her in a way. I think what we do is we honor her and we reflect on the fact that she was a soldier in the African Liberation Army, for
Yes.
African people. She took them shots. She should have teardrops on her eyes coming down here. You know what I'm saying? So she is up there along with the likes of Harriet Tubman and many other African women who really didn't just talk and raise money, so to speak, but they were willing to die and take lives for the freedom of African people. And I think that we have to give her more, not we, I think that we give her the reverence, but I think the African community as a whole need to revere this woman in the way that she is deserving. I was watching a movie the other day. For the first time, I watched the movie The Butler, and I was actually
Oh,
surprised by it. You know, having my own thought about the movie and about what it was going to say. I was actually surprised. There was some depth to it. And in particular, the part that I found most interesting about the entire movie was the segment in the movie where they go from the civil rights, they go from sitting at the counter, which took a long time, to they they demonized the Black Panther Party for self-defense at that point. The woman was disgusting. She was rude. She out there, and then they just basically, that was a blip in the movie. And I think the final thing in that movie, I'm sorry if I'm ruining it for people who are watching, is that the father, the butler, actually comes to understand that his son, who had been involved in all of these struggles, the Black Panther Party, SNCC, Freedom Riders, all of these things, that he was actually a hero for American people.
right.
And I would say that I would not stop and shorten it for Asada, but she was not a hero for American people. She was a hero for African people. And 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 the fact that the movie kind of like demonizes it, I think that's the way that people tend to, look at the Black Panther Party era if you're not like a revolutionary.
That's what I was gonna say. I noticed, especially when you said The Butler, I knew you were gonna talk about that scene because I think it's very interesting. A lot of the, the Black radical, fighters back then, you were seen as like first of all, it's like, okay, this is unrealistic. You're unrealistic. There's no way you're gonna have some crazy revolution and you're gonna take over the system or you're gonna destroy the system. And then the other part of it was like, y'all are like the what I've gotten, especially just as a young woman with my politics, you're so unruly for wanting this. Like they see like the I know with that scene, they come in, she got her afro high as the sky, she got like armpit hair out to here, and then they're eating food and she's like belching and they're like and then
it was gross. It was gross.
Yeah, she was like, get that bitch out of my house and all of that. It's just interesting that to like in a lot of ways it's like the house, the house slave versus the field slave, like they saw like these people as kind of unruly and kind of just willing to be angry and stir up trouble. And that's why, when we look at like Assata Shakur or Huey P. Newton or any of these like African freedom fighters, to some degree, I think the reason certain like sectors of the African petty bourgeois class don't like them is because like you're just an angry, scary person and you're stirring up trouble and we're never going to make any progress if you keep stirring up trouble.
But I think it's more than that. I think it's also fear, because a lot of the family and the parents at that time, they were front and center of the Jim Crow era and the lynching era, So I think it's more than just they think that they're unruly. I think it's fear.
No,
that goes back to that time. Go ahead, today.
In that movie, it wasn't, the parents were fearful, but when it came to this segment of the movie, I talked about the Black Panther Party. It was not just fear. It was, y'all are criminals. Y'all are disgusting. It was specifically an attack on the Black Power movement that navigated away from being passive to being more active in defending and fighting violence with violence, right? So they were always fearful of their son being involved in anything that was not the status quo. And so that's what Assata represents to me. I love the fact that she was somebody who had these strong, ability to talk through and to help us understand like what our responsibility as African people. I also love this favorite quote of mine for those of y'all who are single.
Okay.
That, ain't no revolutionary woman can't be with some backwards
Right.
reactionary man. That's what it is.
All right.
I love that about her, and I appreciate her for really standing her ground and being a part of the process of building a liberated African future. And she's definitely going down in history, whether you like her or not, as one of the best to ever do it, and I think just the ability for her to be able to make a statement and continue to educate African people from Cuba, I think that's even more
Hmm.
significant, because we wouldn't be able to hear anything from her if Cuba did not give
Right.
her asylum in their country. So I appreciate that. And her passing is an end to an era, but she's always going to be idealized and seen as someone who should be worthy of emulation in my
And she
book.
lives on in her autobiography.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, like her autobiography is right up there with Malcolm X's autobiography, Safir Bakari autobiography, and just keep in mind, Asada and uh, um, The War Before were books that we read in Harriet's Daughter's book club and study group. And looking at her book, I've read her book before, but reading her book from an African internationalist perspective is very profound. And it's almost like a manual, especially when she's talking about the African Liberation Army and the underground work that was going down at that time. Her and Safari Bakari, that underground work is very important. That organizing is very important. And I have to salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Huru movement, because we're able to operate in a similar manner where we have mass organizations. Then you have the party, and you have the work. Even within the mass organizations, you have like the funnel with the leading leading committee and everything. We're able to operate on multi levels. I now that I've reread Asada with Harry's Daughter's book club, I can't see how people read her book and don't become revolutionaries. Don't you're like what are you reading? You know, what are you reading? You're not internalizing. You're reading it because it's popular, or maybe you're lying about reading it because she talks about the physical training that they did. She talks about the political education that had to happen. We can't this is not this is not anti colonial Black liberation struggle is not um, a a battle of words. It's not us sitting on social media just talking, because that's not going to get us anywhere. Is
Right.
the physical organizing? It is the attuning to ourselves politically. That's one of the big things about the Black Panther Party, is that political education was so important. But we don't, as African people, as a mass or generalization, we don't study politically. We take what is given to us in our schools that want to hide the truth, and then when we get older and we actually read something, we so starstruck or so surprised about the work that is needed that people go dormant.
Yeah.
And she lives through that book, and I encourage everybody to read it. I encourage it. It's one of those life-changing books that we have to focus on our mind with political education and our bodies with physical training, and then we have to work on developing our communities. So I think that's three top giveaways. I'm like takeaways for me from Asada
Aurora Comrade. Thank you.
Huru.
So there were more things that happened in 2025 that informed the lives of African women. Not only impacted the lives of African women deeply. We want to venture into Africa, our motherland. where we have to get it right. Gotta get to in Africa. I mean, that's it's African women that's gonna lead the charge in Africa. Really, it might be like I think African people overall, but African women, I feel like we have the capacity and we have the it's a what does it call it? It's an opportunity for us to really organize ourselves in a way that will protect our Africa, but also defend our Africa. And in Kenya, at the beginning of last year, there was a story that kicked off around this call against femicide. Right, it's a protest in the streets of Kenya around femicide. And in this show, we've said that Kenya is the Uncle Ruckus of Africa, and so this is not necessarily to say that the people of Kenya are the Uncle Ruckus of Africa, but the government of Kenya is the Uncle Ruckus of Africa, right? And so there was this femicide protest, and we actually put out a statement around this that said that femicide in in Kenya, is just another example of the ongoing violence and colonial violence that is killing African people. And if you were to look at the numbers of African women that were killed in the first, month in Kenya in January, you can also look at the broader population to see how many murders were actually happening. It was on par with the killing of African people through internal conflict or if it was from the state, but the killings of African people. So that the violence essentially. And then ultimately what we said is that these are indicative of a country that don't value the lives of its people, and that obviously this is a big enough statement that was happening
Don't that
in
sound familiar?
this is a big enough statement that was happening in Kenya that the people were out in the streets. But I think that Kenya is one of the countries in Africa that has resources, right? Like more resources than many other places, and so we also begin to see throughout the course of the year that there were other protests that were happening in Kenya, right? So we start to see that this femicide question is not only just isolated question, but that there are questions around governance, there are questions around safety because the police started killing students and people. There were a lot of protests that were happening in Kenya, so that we can also see that the broader picture was not just this question of women, but that it was a question of neocolonialism, right? And the position that Kenya has taken in service of U.S. imperialism. So we can see this all throughout Kenya, and how African women in these cases have always been visible, vocal, and leading many of the protests, and have very important voices that they are contributing in attacking the Kenyan government. But what we said in our statement, and what we continue to maintain, is that we need to have more than this. We can't have this feminist perspective that traps us in the scope of gender, this gendered analysis around women, but that we have to see ourselves in more than just this gendered role. Like we have to see ourselves as contributors to the entire nation, and we have to see outward to know that if something's happening to African women and we're not being protected, then there's something that's happening to the broader society that's impacting our ability for our safety. And so how then do we graduate and toss away this question of feminism, which is pervasive in Kenya, to have an anti-colonial position? And I don't know if Kenya has made it there yet. I haven't heard anything out of Kenya that puts forward an anti-colonial position. But that's, I don't live in Kenya. I'm not on the ground in Kenya. And so if there's comrades on the ground in Kenya, African women in particular, who have heard about these anti-colonial analysis and unite with them, holla at us. But I haven't heard anything about that. And so what we then start to see in Kenya is that, the Kenyan government, true to form, sends its police force to Haiti to carry out the UN's mission in Haiti to keep, to rule Haiti, similar to what's happening in Venezuela. We're gonna rule. And they do that through their armed forces. The United Nations has international armed forces on the ground in Haiti to rule over Haiti and provide them access to the resources, the people, the land, the natural resources in Haiti. And So, I mean, I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything about Kenya, but I think that where we
Yeah.
are at the end of the year is that we have to do more. I think as African internationalists ourselves to connect with more African women on the ground in Kenya, and to really, let's step up our game. We are anti-colonial,
Yeah.
and what you're really objecting to is colonialism and neo-colonialism.
Uhuru. And I want to support that and just say that, these acts of violence against women, specifically far as um, sexual assault, are tools of war. They're strategies of war. It is very and is an old playbook, is an old colonial playbook, and we have to understand that um, Kenya, the what's the RDF in the Congo, they are all tools, neo-colonial tools of of um, of colonialism. They're neo-colonial tools of colonialism. They are being used. They're paid and favored um, because they are doing the work of the oppressor. Kenya going to Haiti is definitely them doing the bidding of US, UK to further colonialize and oppress the country of Haiti.
One thing that got me is because I had discovered this quote from the Fifth Party Congress that we had, when the chairman and everyone basically said, and this is a quote, and I'm looking at it: "We recognize that there is no such thing as women in general. There is a difference between women of the oppressor nation and women of the
Hmm.
oppressed nation." That gets me every time because, you know, the problem, because under colonialism all of these issues are interconnected, sexual assault, and sexual agency, housing, food insecurity. Like, once, when the thing with colonialism is, like, of course African women have a role to play, but the thing that gets me is, instead of looking at it as a gendered issue, it's just the totality of, like, colonial plunder. And I think, because especially in the West, we have a really bad habit of doing that, where we just I like individualize certain issues, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, it's all connected. And that's why so many places in Africa aren't free. Like, yes, of course, nations have issues with their women, nations have different issues with, some nations are poorer than one another, some nations have less resources because of, like, imperialist powers. But that's the thing, it's all imperialist powers that are, like, creating these issues. I mean, just and one thing that makes me that always interested me is, like, with Burkina Faso, but not recent Burkina Faso, like in the 80s with Thomas Sankara. I think he, in a lot of ways, like, he never, if I'm not mistaken, he never outwardly identified as a feminist, but, like, by addressing certain colonial issues, he really, really, like, improved the lives of women in
Yeah.
Burkina Faso.
And he said it. He said it that we solved the issues of the African woman. We solved the issues of everybody. Him and Emil Clark Cabral. Thank you, yesterday, Emil Clark Cabral. I mean, you don't have to be a feminist if you're for the African people in general.
Yeah, that's right on. That's clear. And you don't have to be all of these identities that said that you are in solidarity or whatever. If you just a human being, an African human being that wants freedom and liberation for your entire people, then you will see the motivation to do all the things in society that will combat
If you are
your
an oppressed
your
person
oppression.
of any,
Yes.
persuasion, you support that.
Yeah. So let's go on. We also want to talk about. I'm going to skip over one of our points, and we can come back to it if we
Hmm.
need to. But let's talk about Burkina Faso. That was a hot topic this year. I was really trying to suss out specifically what Burkina Faso has done to the improvement of African women's lives, and I haven't been able to find anything in particular. Um,
And the schools,
Say more.
he opened up schools for African girls.
Okay. Say more.
Um, I mean, because you got to understand, like, they were under um, the oppression of the French, which is a patriarchal, colonialist power. And so the education of African girls was not valued. So they didn't. I think I read an article or watched a video about a can processing plant where most of the workers were African women, which before that, was not something that you will see, because under patriarchy, the man's job is to work. Even though African women been working
Mhm.
under colonialism since the inception, but that white patriarchal mentality was instilled into the people. So under their under and I feel like Ibrahim Traore is very much like we said about Thomas Sankara and Emil Parker Problem, maybe not as much, but is for African people and not just African men. Is he's anti-colonialist, so he's decolonizing in everything. He's trying to decolonize everything that the white colonialists brought, including something controversial that we discussed as well with the banning of homosexuality, and it being sentenced to 5 years in prison. And Miriam, you was on this discussion as well at that time, and I discussed that is to actually stop the sex tourism. Burkina Faso and the European expats that were there created a sex tourism industry. So he wants to stop that as part of the plan of decolonization.
Well, I gotta struggle with you on that, Coco. I
Hmm.
struggle with you a little bit. I think that if you
Yeah,
want to
we did.
stop sex tourism, you just stop sex tourism.
Yeah.
You just clearly
Well,
say we have a
he put the
policy
ban
against.
on U.S. visas. So if you're a U.S. citizen, you can't go into Burkina Faso because he put a ban on U.S. visas. I
Well,
mean,
that's what I'm
is
talking
it?
about. That's what I'm talking about too. Like,
Mhm.
so I don't want to start my entry into Burkina Faso
Yeah,
with the struggle around LGBTQ issues. I want to come back to it when I finish. But
correct.
I thought I agree with you in terms of his attempts at the Burkina Faso government attempts at decolonizing and really shedding the sloth
Hmm.
of colonialism, French colonialism, and all of the colonialism. I think that that what they have been able to do, from what I understand, I don't know all the things. I don't know if it's true or real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But from what the understanding is about Burkina Faso and what it's trying to do to not only preserve um, the legacy of Sankara, but also to really move the people in the country forward out of this dependency is really formidable, particularly with the fact that they don't have the resources, they don't have the military, they don't have all the things that you would think
Hmm.
that a nation needs to have in order to combat with colonialism, right? Colonial forces. So I appreciate everything that the Burkina Faso government has been doing to do that, including some things that people have been seeing recently, which is a ban on the barrister wig, which is a love of mine. I hate the barrister wig. It's that white European wig that you wear when you're a lawyer
Hmm.
in places that were colonized by the Europeans. A banning on that, and importation and discouragement of using imported products for
Yeah.
African women, such as the wigs and the weaves that we might get from other places. And what I've seen in other places in the world that focuses on internally producing these types of things, using fibers and other kinds of things. So I appreciate that, and just all the things that he's been doing to really shore up the structure and the infrastructure of the country. So I think overall these things are going to have a measurable impact on the people in the community. I actually saw a video of him at a table with young folks, and this young sister was like, she was giving it to him. She was asking him questions, priority questions, and very smart young sister. But I am challenged by that law. I think that
Yeah.
I think it's
We
reactionary.
have to be.
I
We
think
have
it's
to be.
backwards, and I want to um, be able to say that I want to give Burkina Faso grace.
Right.
I want
That's
to give
what
the
I
people
mean.
grace.
That's what I mean too.
I
Because
was able
we ought to
to
be free.
I was able to look at who voted on that law, and it was the entire parliament,
Hmm.
was the body that the ruling body of the country, women and men. And I recognize that the narrative in many places in Africa is that that being that way is a part of a colonial trap. That's part of the
Hmm.
colonizer bringing this kind of thing. And of course, as African internationalists, we don't think that. We know that
Correct.
African people have been same gender loving and had different kinds of relationships with one another for before colonialism. I think that what this does, it's not just a ban on being this way. It is a criminalization and
Correct.
incarceration of of the population. That is the triggering part for me. And so I'm hoping that with further persuasion and maybe some discussion and education around the issue, that can be overturned soon, because I
Absolutely.
don't think that is a part of making forwarding you know you know the future for African people is these oppressive and very backwards laws. Um, and then, does anybody else want to say anything about Africa? Okay. Um, and honorable mention, not because it's honorable, because I just want to say it because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Sudan and the ongoing fighting that is happening in the country. We wrote something about Sudan as well, and to try to
Hmm.
give an historical analysis around what's happening and what's going on the ground, and the immeasurable impact that it's had on African women who have been large African women and children. I would say men too, but that have been the victims of this fighting, which nobody wins. The RSF and the SAF are not there to free African people from colonialism. They're there and they're fighting over power and to get control over a government that will be able to, be the intermediates of U.S. and European imperialism in the place. Sudan, as many of you may know, is has the port of Sudan that is the gateway to
Right.
Africa in many ways. So if you have control over this port, you have control over the waterway that
Hmm.
feeds ships and other kinds of things into Africa on that waterway. So we should think about that, but also so that Sudan is rich in natural resources. I mean, the conflicts that happen in Africa are not these benign sort of conflicts of I don't like you and you don't like me.
Right.
These
They're
are
not
rooted
tribal
in,
wars.
yeah, these are rooted in very real material things that are on the ground. And one thing I love about, I say one thing, I love the chairman all the time, but like I think
All
that
the time.
what he has said is that everybody's fighting. Nobody's really fighting for Africa. They're fighting for Nigeria, they're fighting for Sudan, they're fighting for Congo, but who is fighting for Africa? And an African People's Socialist Party is fighting for Africa and African people all over the world.
Oh,
So I
bro.
wanted to mention Sudan because there's still ongoing fight and there's still immeasurable amounts of lives lost, and there's still work that needs to be done within the African nation, not only just to support this particular issue, but to support everything that's happened with African people. And the only way we could do that is to destroy colonialism. And what are we doing to build
Hmm.
our capacity to do that? Um,
I also think that as that we have to help African as a mass organization. We have to help the masses kind of decolonize
from the resources that they're stealing. Like we can't fall into the propaganda of getting a new phone every time someone comes out, because we have to look at, attaining a new device that uses coltan or any other of the other resources from the Congo or Sudan, or any other part of Africa. We gotta equate that to human life, to African life, because our people, African people, are dying attaining these resources for the oppressors. And we have to decolonize the masses from feeding colonialism. They feed in the capitalist colonialist system by falling into the propaganda. Like the short term boycott was a good idea, but after December 5th, everybody went and bought everything that that they didn't buy for those past days. So how important really, or how significant really was, was the boycott for the blackout? Like we have to develop dual and contending powers, and that comes with educating the masses of what's out there. That's us working in solidarity with other organizations and businesses that are going to be African focused. Like when you purchase Decolonase or from our storefront, we're not colonial capitalists, so you're not feeding the capitalist structure. Those funds from Decolonase and our storefront go right into the programs of ANWO, and programs of ANWO are always for the community, for the African working class. It's not us, looking to get the crumbs or be petty, be neo-colonialist, or even have power of African peoples and servitude of African people. The clothing drive in St. Louis is for African people. The events that is done in San Diego and LA are in support of the African community.
Yeah. Thank you, comrade.
Mhm.
I know we only have about 20 minutes left.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go into what is ANWO doing. We've been talking a lot about the world and things that impact us, right? There's some more that can be said toward the end of the year, and particularly the U.S. But ANWO came up with a strategy. We said we want to address the contradictions that are happening to African women, in particular in the United States, where we all reside, but most of us reside. We saw cuts happening to Medicaid and cuts happening to social service programs, where a lot of African women, not a lot of African women who need those to maintain themselves, are being impacted. And because we're an organization of the African poor and working class, a lot of our constituency, get some of those services. And so ANWO has committed ourselves, as always, not only just to do like campaigns like Arrest CPS and Uhuru Kijiji Child Care Collective, which is a part of what we have to do now, really, to solve the question, but we have done Organize and Fight Win, right? Organize, Fight, Win is gonna has been initiated. We are focusing in on collective and sustainable economics for African people, in particular African women. We are focusing on security. How do we create that for our communities and build the networks that we needed to? Economic development overall for sustainable and organized communities, building dual and contending power, so that we're not sitting here like, if the United States crumbles tomorrow and people ain't got resources, and that we be all right for the most part, right? Like, because we've created the institutions and infrastructure to, support the work that we need to do to get free. And much of the work that we do in the Uhuru movement is about building dual and contending power programs, so that we can, because we intend to govern. We expect that colonialism will be
It's
driven
gonna
into the
die.
ground because of the resistance of African people, and that we are organizing ourselves to make that happen. And we intend that when colonialism finally crumbles, that we will have the ability to govern ourselves. There will be no collapse of this and collapse. There might be some collapses, to be quite honest. There
Right.
will be some collapses, but we will be positioning ourselves so that what we have created for ourselves would be institutions that can sustain us until we get access to the in control of over our resources. So AMWO has been looking at not looking, but organizing ourselves. We've had meetings with our members. We've formed committees, and we have established several things that will address, these concerns. And you'll be seeing more coming out from us. First of all, you've heard it already with Project St. Louis. I think I can screen share real quick. Um,
Hmm.
Let me do this real quick. Project St. Louis, yes. Select the screen.
I'm excited for Project St. Louis. This is getting the work that's that we want to do on the ground is just it's motivating.
Yeah, so we have a project, and if you've been on our socials, you've seen this picture. And why are we focused on St. Louis? You gotta be asking, because that's where the headquarters of our movement is. I got so many tabs open. I do not want y'all to see all my tabs. So we're going to ahead and pull this out, and then we got so much stuff that'll be in show right now. Oh, look at that. Okay, I forget.
Ooh.
But yeah, Project St. Louis is our uh, our strategy to solve the problems of the African Revolution in St. Louis, where our comrades are headquartered. It is where we're combining the at One Africa One Nation Farmers Market, the Annual Liberation Center, the Thrive workshops, and activities to organize African women around food, land, economic development, and concrete skills for African liberation. We've already been engaged in the One Africa One Nation Farmers Market for the last 5 years, and building community control of economics, and building farm to table that's a key, farm to table connections in the African community. We've also been organizing to raise funds for the Animal Liberation Center. One of the things, we had to dial it back a little bit. We were able to get a new roof on our building, which, despite the tornado, we were still able to. The roof saved us because we still have a roof on our building. But there's more work that has to happen, and we have to raise the resources to get us there. But
Yes.
before we do that, we have to build ourselves on the ground and initiate
Mm.
services and build our base. And so the Animal Liberation Center is a part of Project St. Louis, because all of the things that we're doing is working toward building our base so that we can have bodies on the ground and in this building once it's completed. And then we initiated something called the Thrive workshops, which are recentered in St. Louis but can happen anywhere that AMWO is, which focuses on workshopping and trainings that focuses on collective economics, leadership training, and practical skill building that will help African women navigate, the times that we are currently in, but also, even if we weren't in these current times, we'll navigate the times, period. A lot of African women that's in our work have been impacted by policy,
Hmm.
by the growing economic strain, and we got to be able to respond. We are responding to that. So we are asking people to donate toward this. We're in a fundraising drive for this entire month. If you can't donate, we're asking you to share our information. There's a website page. If you go to anwohuru.org, this is the website. If you go to anwohuru.org and project dash St. Louis, St. Louis, and you'll find out more. To donate all these things to this project, and we're hoping that you are able to do that during this month and beyond, because we're going to continue to fundraise until we can get the resources that we need. What do we need the money for? We need the money for doing the Thrive workshops. We need the money for food, and we need the money for transportation for comrades. We need the money for securing the building, the Animal Liberation Center, with cameras to make sure that our stuff is safe. We need to get outreach materials so that we can organize in our communities and spread information and do political education on the ground in real time amongst the community. So all these things take resources. And so when you donate to AMWO in general, all of your money goes to this work, but Project St. Louis in particular is about building that base and that power in the headquarters of the African Liberation Movement. So that's just one of the things that AMWO is doing to build ourselves and respond to the conditions that colonialism has imposed on African people and African women. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the page I was currently on. I was on a little bit.
Look, and why are you talking? Go ahead.
Go ahead, comrade.
No, I was going to say, while you're talking about that, I can talk about Harriet's Daughters Book Club, because I am the information education coordinator. The Harriet's Daughters Book Club is a project of AMWO where we meet monthly in person or virtual to talk about African literature from African internationalist perspective. Is a form of political education, and it's open as a mass program. So it's open to African women, femmes, and anyone that's in solidarity. And we've talked about some really great books this year. I did mention Assata, but we also discussed, let me see, what all did we discuss? I can bring it up here. So currently, the last book we discussed books and articles as well. We looked at how to organize using the inspiration from the first Intifada over in Palestine. December, we looked at fighting formations, and that's practical ways to organize, and how we can learn from how we can learn from from our historical dialectic approach. We can learn from the Black Panther Party, the Civil Rights Movement. We're able to actually develop our political aptitude during the AMWO Book Club. We talk about books that may not be common. Like we talked about refusing compulsory sexuality, and how in refusing compulsory sexuality is part of the liberation movement. We yesterday mentioned that in here as African internationalists, we don't look at same gender loving people as a problem that we know is a natural occurrence. So the idea that there's something wrong with someone that has that is non-compulsory or non-traditional gender or sexuality, or even relationship roles, are actually, that's a act of liberation or act of revolution there, and that every African person matters in the liberation of African people, and every African person deserves the freedom to have agency and autonomy. And that's just a couple of books that we discussed. But we discuss a new book every single month.
Uhuru. Thank you, comrade. Uhuru. And I'm just gonna track people to go to our website to look at the events that we have coming up. I want to highlight an event that's happening next weekend. If you are anywhere near St. Louis, or you got people in St. Louis, tell them to come out to the People's Clothing Exchange. And it's going to be on January 10th at Friday. I think that's Friday or Saturday, from 11 to 3 at the AMWO Liberation Center at 4617 Natural Bridge Avenue. There's our information. You can contact those comrades at stl@amwouhuru.org. This flyer is on our website, is on our social media. So if you forget from this broadcast or want to know more, you can always just go to our website to find out more about that. I also want to say that we have regional meetings that are coming up. Our Western regional meeting is for comrades in the West. We have the People's Clothing Exchange. We have San Diego going to do an annual coffee and political education on that January 11th as well in in Lemon Grove, California. Comrade talked about the Harriet's Daughters of Book Club. And we just continue to grow. I also want to just give y'all a heads up on the annual Cadre Development School, which will be launching end of February, and is focused on political education. Learn with us. We love doing the breakdowns, but we're going to be getting into it. We're going to be talking about why we do this, but mostly like why you should do this, and just give historical materialist analysis and discussions, interactive curriculum that you can get into. If you are a member of the African National Women's Organization, it is $30 to register. If you are a lifetime member of the African National Women's Organization, it is free. If you are not a member of the African National Women's Organization, then it's $60. And what we decided to do for this Cadre Development School is, if you want to attend the African People's Socialist Party plenary that happens in April of this year, that if you graduate with us at the Cadre Development School, we could translate or transfer your registration fee to attend the plenary, either virtually or in person. And that's just to cover the registration fee. So we want you to be a part of the process of building, organizing, learning, and really, I want to say mobilizing. It is mobilizing, but it also is organizing, really, essentially. Yes, we will be doing that. And then, just plug in. We have social media. We got emails that we share to folks. We have texts and all of that stuff that we want you to be involved in. And just so that you know that these programs are political education, discussions around issues that we find important. But essentially what we want to do is organize and build. So if you are an African woman and you are interested in breaking colonialism, coming out of the trap, I'm gonna let Comrade Miriam
even if you're interested,
I'm gonna let Comrade Miriam talk about it so she can, I got dry mouth now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the best thing to do is to get out there and do something, and I do believe Annual has a great line and we just have a great line of work. We're bringing African women to political life, because I think it's so easy to find something like this daunting, right? I think that's just when you hear the words political life, you're like, what does that mean? And it's not just about, we do read books, we do have political education, but it's also a sisterhood. It's definitely a sisterhood. But I think the thing about having like-minded women in an organization like this is it makes the work easier to get done, especially President Yejide just mentioned earlier in the stream that retreat, with, for example, at Comrade Coco, that was my first time meeting her in person, because we see each other on these streams and these meetings, but when you meet these people in person and then you get to understand pause.
Yeah, you pause.
The theory of African nationalism, I feel like, has been really put to the test just in the work we're doing. I was talking to a comrade earlier today, and I was talking about African internationalism and the chairman, and the chairman, in the sense, he's such a Lenin-like figure in terms of building organizations, building a party. And I think the best thing is of course, we're not free automatically, but I feel like being involved in African daily political revolutionary life, I feel like we're getting free one day at a time. So I think we're doing a lot of amazing work, and especially in our respective areas around the country, in places like I am, like Philadelphia, or Maryland, where other comrades are, San Diego, Ohio. But our goal is to expand. We really want to expand these organizations. We're in quite a few states, but we need to be in all 50 states. We need to be in multiple cities and in different states. And we need to have as many, African women who are ready for the fight on board. So why not? Why not? And if you can't join immediately, come to some events, get to see the sisterhood, get to find out what's going on. Because like at the end of the day, it's interesting. We talked about all the effort that was put into Kamala Harris's campaign, but that was like a nationwide campaign. There are things that you could do in your immediate local, 5-10 minutes down the street from your house. We don't gotta wait until like Kwame Ture said, why is your highest form of civic engagement a ballot in a ballot box every 4 years? Like, get out there and do something. And that's what Anwell's about, honestly.
So perfect.
Yeah.
And finally, I wanted to bring our attention back to the African People's Socialist Party plenary. I love us getting together as a party.
Yes.
This has been one of the greatest opportunities for African revolutionaries in my lifetime to discuss and plot. I hate to use the word plot, but the trajectory of our work. We trying to get free, y'all, and I love seeing my comrades from all over the country, international, and it's open to the public. You should register for this. There's an online registration. There is an in-person registration. I don't think you're going to get the full program when you're looking online, but if you can't get to St. Louis, you can't do it, then do the virtual, but do registration. It is affordable. It is, in April, so it's giving us a lot of time to plan together. So you should go to apspplenary.org, apspplenary.org. You see it up there. And you should find out more about what is being called on African people to do. And you should register as soon as you can. Even if you don't know if you're going to be able to go, there's no refunds. But we can, if you just want to register, and I don't know if I'm going to go, but maybe that you want to donate your registration to somebody else who may not be able to afford the registration, go ahead and do that. And just let us know that in the comments. But, it's that time. This time till it's one, power in our own hands. It's not just Trump, it's the whole damn system. April 17th, the 19th, 2026, that's Friday through Sunday, is over a weekend. I mean, just like we plan to go on our little vacations and we plan to go do our little thing, we plan to attend this because you will be sorry that you missed it. And particularly if you're watching the breakdown, particularly if you're interested in African freedom, you should definitely want to be at the African People's Socialist Party International Plenary 2026. So, any last thoughts before we close out today's program, comrades?
I do want to throw out that we only went over a few things that we did this year. We did a lot of things this year, including the breakdown, local, our Arrest CPS postering campaign. We are on the ground. We are not just on the internet. We're not talking heads. We're not podcast regular. We're not regular podcast people, but we are on the ground. Hooroo.
And Miriam, this is your first time. Your first time with us on screen. What do you think?
You know what? I was a bit nervous at first, but when the line of conversation starts going, it's hard not to dive in.
But so thank you, comrades, for sticking in there with us in doing this 2025 year in review. Please stand by for our annual statement on the attack on Venezuela and continue to support AMWO as an organization, just like all these African women did, these Black women did, to support the attempt to save U.S. democracy through the Kamala Harris campaign. I want y'all to go ahead and support AMWO, give it that same energy, because we have a lot to do and we need the community support to do it. So with that, I'm going to say check in, lock in with us this year and beyond, and we'll be talking to you very soon. So Uhuru, and